All right, we're back, folks. You're listening to Real Talk on Mojo 50. We're talking about Trump's victory and vindication against the Democrats and their made-up, nonsensical RussiaGate. In the vast history of great civilizations, no nation save the United States can claim to have faced its certain destruction so many countless times, only to be miraculously delivered by a mercy whose dimensions defy human understanding. Even America's founding was full of, for lack of a better word, folks, miracles. At the Battle of Trenton, where Washington famously crossed the Delaware on Christmas Eve night to attack the fearsome Hessians with just a gaggle of frostbitten, war-weary farmers, a mysterious mob of people emerged from the forest that ultimately distracted the Hessians and handed George Washington the victory. Why is that so miraculous? Number one, they've never been able to identify who these angelic sentries were. All accounts record their existence in the battle, but none of their bodies were ever found. Folks, in short, there's always been something special about America. That one battle decided the fate of the American Revolution. And what makes it special? Yes, the system is a big part of it. Our Constitution, it's made us more durable than other attempts at freedom. Greek city-states had written law. Babylon, the Code of Hammurabi, had written law. It wasn't very good, an eye for an eye. Sounds painful. But that's not why. That's not the only reason, nor even the most important reason that America is special. There's also an unmistakable nobility of her presidents. What other country could be ripped apart by a president to collect an illegal tax, turned into a military dictatorship by said president, and then restored to its former democratic glory by the same president? If you think I'm talking about Barack Obama, you're dead wrong. Meet Abraham Lincoln. He allowed the bloodiest tragedy in the history of the Union, the Civil War, to collect an illegal 41% tax on the South, favored by New York bankers. Nothing new under the sun. Trump may well boast that he is more popular than Abraham Lincoln, who is now immortalized in his own temple as the great emancipator. But the truth is, Lincoln grew a lot on the job, saying this in one of his proclamations. And this is right after, by the way, this is right after Gettysburg that he wrote this. May we not justly fear that the awful calamity of civil war which now desolates the land may be but a punishment inflicted upon us for our presumptuous sins? We have been the recipients of the choicest bounties of heaven. We have grown in numbers, wealth, and power as no nation has ever grown. But we have forgotten God, Lincoln writes. We have vainly imagined in the deceitfulness of our hearts that all of these blessings were produced by some superior wisdom and virtue of our own, unquote. Folks, if that same man, the man who is responsible directly and indirectly for over 600,000 dead American brothers, brother against brother in that war, if he can be changed, then we definitely have hope for this president, and we definitely must defend his legitimate right to govern. Evil always casts a big shadow, and it relies on the size of our fear to discourage a fight. But good requires only a few determined, honest, and willing hearts to triumph, and usually gets very little recognition for its great sacrifice. There are always and will always be diabolical plans to enslave humanity, and tsunamis of mindless followers ready to cooperate in their own destruction to the sound of rapturous applause. But we always defeat their worst laid plans. And America, at least so far, always survives the tsunami. Why? Because of leaders like Donald John Trump, who are not too proud to pray, like Lincoln, and who are willing to do anything for the country that gave them everything.
This is not simply another four-year election. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The corporate media in our country is no longer involved in journalism. They're a political special interest, no different than any lobbyist or other financial entity with a total political agenda, and the agenda is not for you, it's for themselves. This is a struggle for the survival of our nation, believe me. And this will be our last chance to save it. This election will determine whether we're a free nation or whether we have only the illusion of democracy.
Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. But I do ask every publisher, every editor, and every newsman in the nation to re-examine his own standards and to recognize the nature of our country's peril. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Freedom lives or dies as the result of one choice by one person at a precise time to either remain hidden and safe or to give up everything. Freedom is just a word itself, the simple ordering of letters, and yet it is considered the greatest reason to live, and conversely, the most noble reason entire generations have proudly died. Freedom is a mere idea, but it's an idea that represents the summit of all man's hopes and dreams, the closest thing on earth to heaven. A man once told his son as they waited in line to become American citizens. Freedom is what man's carved out for himself after centuries of fighting for something better than just jungle law, fighting so that he can stand on his own 2 feet, free and decent, like he was created, no matter his race, color, or creed. Words spoken by the late James Stewart in Frank Capra's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That's why we have to ask ourselves what the Democrats have been doing. What has animated them? What has motivated them to do this thing, to deceive the nation with this new Red Scare? And furthermore, how deranged does someone have to be to want America to fail? Which is really the only thing we can conclude about the Democrats right now, folks, is that they would rather America fail than have lost. I mean, this is essentially what they're saying with their actions. No thanks. Trump is robbing us of our demise, but don't worry, we'll burn it all down anyway and get things back on schedule. I mean, folks, that's what they're saying with their actions. Sadistic does not adequately explain such insanity, and yet it's exactly what the criminal elements in our own government crave. Doomsday did not happen because of Trump, and now their doomsday vacations are postponed. Normal humans, granted another season of living, working, dreaming, and loving, would leap out of their doomsday bunkers gleefully. Not Brennan, Comey, Clapper, or Mueller. Thanks to Trump, we have an extra inning, folks. Another chance to see the sunrise, go to work, and feed our families. Trump is inarguably the reason for America's resurgence. It's morning in America once more. So why would Trump allow the perverse, bring it down, America-hating Democrat deep staters to steal the previous election retroactively? That's what they're promoting. Hillary says she can still be president if her emails were opened by a few Russians. She's like a little girl who goes into fits of rage when someone reads her diary. The difference? Her emails aren't hers. They're government property. My property. Your property. Her emails were made for you and me. Blah blah, insert progressive mantra here. The problem is, Hillary's bloody do-over ploy is tantamount to insurrection. And according to the U.S. Constitution, that's no laughing matter. In fact, in the event of an insurrection, the Constitution empowers the President to use the full force of the U.S. military. He could avoid the mess now by picking one of her many, many felonies and prosecuting to conviction. Why wait? End the limbo. Unless maybe Trump is on a leash. A CIA leash, or an NSA leash perhaps. It's amazing what having the total sum of a person's texts, emails, chat messages, errant pictures, mistakes, and every regret stored permanently in a government database can do in the way of leverage with powerful people. Yes, even the president. But they tried that with Trump. He won anyway, folks. He won anyway. They tried it again with Stormy Daniels. His poll numbers got better. What explains Trump's clearly contradictory behavior? Well, in the final analysis, Trump may or may not have full control. But it will certainly not hurt our chances as a country to close ranks around the president and give him permission to clean out the wanton treason at the big three intelligence agencies. Folks, let's review what the Democrats, in collusion with their treacherous elements in the intelligence community, were willing to do to this country. For example, let's look at some names that you might recognize or may not recognize, but names that nonetheless have been very active in the last few years. Phil Mudd, deputy director to the former FBI director Robert Mueller, who's in charge of the Russia investigation, flat out threatened President Trump's life on network television. He said, quote, "Let me give you one bottom line as a former government official. Government is going to kill this guy," unquote, Mudd said on The Lead, a CNN program. Folks, think about what you just heard. Those words were spoken by someone, and a guy who speaks of the government as this detached thing that operates independently of you and me. Think about the insanity behind that. Okay, former CIA director, that's the guy that ran the whole thing. Okay, John Brennan advocated military coups against the president, the White House, on multiple occasions, at least 3 that we know of. High-ranking Democrat U.S. Senator Charles Schumer told the New York Police Department to pull protection from the president's 12-year-old son, Barron Trump, and the First Lady, Melania Trump, and later excused it in the press, saying, "Let me tell you, you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you." Schumer said that on MSNBC's Rachel Maddow, folks. This is mainstream television. This guy is photographed and videoed next to Nancy Pelosi all the time. Whenever you're seen with the president, he looks ahead with that creepy, evil, satanic smile that he's got. That little lip curl thing he does. Folks, this man's evil. They're all evil. Evil's a word I don't throw around lightly on this show. You know that, folks. Because I believe that we need to be able to have conversations with each other as Americans. But these folks left their American identity behind a long time ago for something bigger, better, something that they believed it was higher and deserving of more of their loyalty and dedication than their basic identity as American citizens. And those folks no longer get to be treated like regular American citizens. Okay? When they give that up, when they say we're not Americans, we're something bigger, then you treat them like that. You treat them as people that are evil and against you, the average American citizen, because that's what they are announcing they are. Okay? That's the exception to my rule on this show. All right? So then you get really there's just too many examples of this, of Democrats in positions of key positions of power threatening the president's life in the last 2 years. All right, so when Trump was at Helsinki, you had Brennan accuse him of treason, and all he did was observe that, and I'm going to quote the president, quote, "You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the DNC's server. Why haven't they taken the server? Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democrat National Committee? I've been wondering that," Trump said. So what the president's saying is, it's crazy that we're still saying that the Russians did it when we haven't even examined the server, the key piece of evidence that would have that on it. It would be able to indicate to us whether or not the Russians really did anything, because we haven't examined it. So the president, wow, the nerve of the president to demand that the FBI actually examine the evidence before drawing a flipping conclusion. That's right. The FBI never even examined the DNC's allegedly hacked email server before concluding the Russians did it, folks. More importantly, the January 6, 2017 intelligence assessment, widely misrepresented as consensus that Russia hacked our elections, the FBI cautioned that their judgment might be wrong. That's a quote. In other words, we can't know. California U.S. Representative Adam Schiff, now the chair of the Intel Committee in the House, admitted they had no evidence, but said, quote, "It simply does not matter," unquote. Folks, this is called attempt to overthrow the U.S. government. And according to Chapter 18, U.S. Code, paragraph 2385, quote, "Whoever knowingly or willfully advocates, abets, advises, or teaches the duty, necessity, desirability, or propriety of overthrowing or destroying the government of the United States or the government of any state, territory, district, or possession thereof, or the government of any political subdivision therein, by force or violence, or by the assassination of any officer of any such government," unquote, "can face charges, and much worse. Brennan, who was CIA chief under Clinton and Obama, should be arrested immediately under Chapter 18 of U.S. Code. Why is Trump allowing the horror show to continue? That's my beef with Trump, okay? I'm glad that this is finally over and that he's been vindicated in terms of us knowing that it was a farce and that the American people now can encounter this as it really is a big lie, all right? I'm glad that the chips are on the table. But let's go ahead and remove a few chips from the table. Let's go ahead and remove these people from society who are trying to bring our government and our way of life to a crashing conclusion. We don't want anarchists out among us, do we? Do we want Antifas running around pulling down statues? That's bad enough. But when you got people who actually had power, who are clearly trying to bring our system to a collapse, they're trying to destroy our way of life, those people, President Trump, should not still be running around. Arrest them, please. Remove them from society. You have our support. We don't want people that don't want us to live around us and doing things to our way of life that we can't control or influence. This is not okay, President Trump. So, some say the reason the president's waiting to arrest these folks and prosecute them is his 5D chess theory. Okay, it's popular with some. But for those who watch Trump's televised apology to the U.S. intelligence community, it is increasingly clear that Trump may no longer be completely in charge. So that bothers me. Now, I disagree that he's not in charge. All right, I think he is. I disagree with Tucker Carlson, who said that that the president bowed to the inevitable genuflecting before U.S. intelligence agency. I disagree with him. I don't think that was as he said, Trump's reciting the now obligatory oath of loyalty to the spy bureaucrats now in charge of our country. That's a very powerful thing to accuse the president of, folks. I disagree with Tucker on that. And he's my former boss. Just goes to show you we don't have to fall in line, on everything with everybody. I don't agree with Tucker's assessment of Trump in doing that. I really don't. However, I am concerned that the president is letting too many rats and spiders scurry about, and there's just no need. There's just no reason for it, folks. We just don't need to do it. We don't need to allow that. Folks, Trump is not obligated to do this for us. He has given up his regularity, his life, okay, his normalcy, his sense that he's got it made and that he's given up his anonymity too, as someone who knew what was going on, and he was part of it, folks. He admits it himself. He was on the inside. He had the good life. He told us in 2016, I'm going to read a quote here, that I knew they would throw every lie they could at me and my family and my loved ones. This is Trump talking. But I never knew it would be as bad as it would be, he said. I never knew it would be this vile, that it would be this bad, and that it would be this vicious. I didn't need to do this, folks. Believe me, Trump says. He says he built a great company. He had a wonderful life. Instead of going through this absolute horror show of lies, deceptions, malicious attacks, Trump said, I'm doing it because this government has given me so much, and I feel so strongly that it's my turn to give back to the country that I love. I take all of these slings and arrows gladly for you, the president said.
Framing and defaming someone, it's just $100,000, pocket change. But if it's the Russians, that $100,000 becomes an absolute fortune. Crime against America and God.
I've always been suspicious that the Russia bot narrative was flimsy and was probably made up, simply because that's the kind of thing that the Democratic Party does. They make things up in order to create the basis for an attack on the right wing and on the conservatives. This is in the character of the Democratic Party and in the, or lack of character, I should say. And it's a criminal element that has taken over the Democratic Party. The mainstream media only talk about things that service that Democratic Party agenda. And it's an agenda that we saw in Syria. It's an agenda that will lead to war. It's an agenda that risks nuclear conflict with the two great nuclear powers. It's an agenda that needs to be stopped.
All right, folks, this is me on Russia Today. I suppose that makes me a Russian spy, right? Because I appeared on a foreign network. That was me on Russia Today talking about the Democrats' use of bots and an imitation of a Russian algorithm in the Alabama elections in order to illegally influence the outcome of those elections. The only Russians are those phantoms that the Democrats created that with their own keyboards and their own keystrokes, folks. They're the Russian spies. If you're going to get technical, the phantom Russians were the Democrats all along. Are you shocked? Me neither. Now, folks, we're going to review a few other facts about the Russian collusion narrative that are often overlooked. For example, it's forgotten that the origins of this were Hillary Clinton, okay, who claimed that because a few of her emails may or may not have been read, that she had the right to be president, as if that invalidated the vote tallies or invalidated our choice as American citizens. Folks, that's like food. That's like grocery stores complaining about sell-by dates and saying that sell-by dates are bad because if people know that some of the food is rotten or unsafe to eat, they won't buy as much of it. That would be silly, would it not? So here are the facts. Okay, here are the basic facts that you need to know. Number one, there's actually more evidence that former President Barack Obama colluded with Hillary Clinton to steal the election than there is evidence of phantom Russian hackers, number one. Number two, it's unlikely that Russia's limited-scale social media campaigns had greater impact on voters than the former FBI Director James Comey's last-minute letter about Hillary's illegal activities. Moreover, The argument that because U.S. intelligence agencies, and here's the biggie, folks, the argument that because U.S. intelligence agencies agree on something, that we should unreservedly trust their analysis, especially when it drips with naked political opportunism, is flawed at best. And where it concerns Russian collusion claims, the argument is not only flawed, it is also patently false. I mean, hell, how long has it been since Iraq, the Iraq War, folks? Remember when our 13 intelligence agencies agreed on that one? Thought so. Okay, here's the reality. This is number 3. This is point for home. The reality is the Obama administration's January 6th assessment included only 3 intelligence agencies, one of which was the NSA. They're the guys that actually intercept Russian communications. And they said that they were only moderately confident, quote unquote, of the conclusion that they were behind anything. The other agencies, the CIA and the FBI, cautioned that their judgment, quote, might be wrong, unquote. And more importantly, folks, the assessment concluded that the Russian hacking was not involved in vote tallies. Not involved in vote tallying, quote unquote. It turns out the FBI didn't even examine, as we discussed earlier, they didn't even look at the DNC's allegedly hacked email server before concluding the Russians did it. We didn't get direct access to the server, quote unquote. Former FBI Director James Comey testified before Congress under oath. He said we didn't get access to it. Okay, petty theft, not even petty theft, folks, would be prosecuted on the basis of such shoddy forensics. Besides, Obama himself assured the American people that the alleged Russian intervention did not compromise election results. The election was not tarnished. We have not seen evidence of machines being tampered with, Obama said. That means the Russian boogeyman did not exist, folks. It was false, fake. It was not real. It was a farce. It was a lie. It was a sham. It was a con.
Hello there. This is your man in Moscow, Carlton Kaduli. This year, an estimated 23,000 Americans will visit the Soviet Union as tourists. We're interested in finding how many Russians are planning to visit our shores. May we speak with you, sir?
If you're so able to, you can do it.
What is your name, if may I ask?
Yuri Rozanov.
Yuri Rozanov.
Yes.
May I call you Yuri?
You could call me by my nickname.
What's that?
You. Yes.
Well, thank you, you. Are you planning in the near future to visit our great country?
Indubitably not.
You don't plan to visit?
Not than your tintype.
Are you interested in seeing America?
Not for a minute. We'll explain it to you. I have been there.
You have visited
Yes.
our fine country. When, sir?
I was there Sunday a week.
You mean a week ago Sunday you were in
A week ago
America?
Sunday I was there.
Well, tell me, sir, how did you get there?
I got there, you guess.
Well, you were in a tour, an excursion?
No, I wasn't.
By plane?
No.
By boat?
Submarine.
That's
And
hard
then
to believe, sir. That's hard to
It's an
believe.
amazing story to behold, but we could demonstrate it to you.
Could you? Well, how could you demonstrate this?
We have photographs.
You have
Moving
photographs?
Moving pictures.
Where will we see these?
You right here?
You took these pictures
Indeed I did.
in color and Panavision?
Naturally, we invented it. You see, that is how we got to America.
The Russians have landed.
This whole danged island's under attack by Russians.
Big boats.
Yes.
Motor power
All
boats.
different kinds of boats, yes.
All right, folks, you've been listening to Real Talk on Mojo 50, and as always, truth is the only political dividing line. Bye-bye now.